Board members, the time is now 4:55 p.m. and we are live on the channel.
Thank you.
The time is now 5 p.m. You may begin if you're ready.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the board's November action meeting. Board Member Fix Lopez, we're all glad to have you back with us. Before we begin this evening's meeting, I'd like to share a few announcements with you. First, I'd like to acknowledge on behalf of the board Penn's $100 million contribution to the School District of Philadelphia. It's an unprecedented commitment to the city and its public school children. Every student in Philadelphia deserves the dignity of a safe and welcoming school building. This tremendous gift will not only help us to ensure these safe places for every student, but it will also free us to direct our focus to investing in a new and compelling vision for school facilities. We thank the University of Pennsylvania for this incredible gift, which is an investment in all of our city's children. Secondly, the board would like to express its gratitude to all those who work so diligently to develop a contract that the Pennsylvania Federation of Teachers has approved. We know this was a challenging endeavor, and we appreciate everyone's efforts. Thirdly, this is American Education Week, which is a perfect opportunity to recognize our talented and dedicated public education employees that make a positive difference every day for our students, families, schools, and communities. In this unprecedented year, we have seen our school employees rise to meet many unique challenges in innovative ways to support and educate our students. On behalf of the board, please know how much we appreciate you and how grateful we are for your commitment to our students. We wish you a happy American Education Week. Fourthly, the non-renewal hearing for Universal Charter School at Bluford and Universal Charter School at Darrell has concluded. The Board of Education will now accept public comment for 30 days. Comments should be emailed to schoolboard@philasd.org with the subject, public comment, and the school on which you are commenting, or sent to Board of Education, Suite 101, 440 North Broad Street, Philadelphia, PA, 19130. Comments must be received by Monday, December 14th. Finally, this week the mayor announced the nominating process to choose 3 new board members. Please go to the mayor's website for more information. We're looking forward to welcoming 3 new board members in the new year. I'll now begin tonight's meeting by asking Vice President Ahea Hinton to make general announcements to our guests.
Good evening. At every Board of Education meeting, a representative from the Deaf Hearing Communication Center is here to provide sign language interpretation of the proceedings. The proceedings of this meeting are being streamed live on the internet at www.philasd.org/live and can be seen on PSTV's Comcast Channel 52 and Verizon Fios Channel 20. The proceedings are also being recorded by the School District of Philadelphia. The school district recordings are protected by the copyright laws of the United States and may not be used in any manner without the express written consent of the school district. By participating in tonight's meeting, members of the public acknowledge that the school district may use its recordings for any purpose without obtaining permission or paying any compensation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Vice President Ahea Hinton. Ms. Rout, please make an announcement about the board's executive session and then call the roll.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to announce that the Board of Education met in executive session on October 29th to discuss labor relations and privileged and confidential matters, and also the litigation PFT versus School District of Philadelphia, Philadelphia County Court of Common Pleas number 2001-02262, which is an action asking the court to confer additional rights over the PFT regarding district facilities. The board also met on November 5th in executive session to discuss labor relations and privileged and confidential matters, and met this afternoon to discuss personnel and employment matters, privileged and confidential matters, investigations, and information or strategy in connection with the following litigations. The first is the PFT versus School District of Philadelphia case, which I just referenced. And then in addition, Aspire Inc. of Pennsylvania versus School District of Philadelphia, United States District Court of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, number 2:19-CV-4415. This is a suit alleging breach of contract and due process claims. The next matter is School District of Philadelphia versus the Inquirer, Philadelphia County Court of Common Pleas, number 191000217. This case involves right to know law issues. Pagan versus School District of Philadelphia, U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, docket number 19-CV-05799. This case alleges negligence and civil rights violations. Watson versus School District of Philadelphia, Philadelphia County Court of Common Pleas, number 200-8000022, alleging personal injury claims. Then Eastern Academy Charter School versus School District of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court, number 1167, CD 2019. This is a case seeking review of a non-renewal decision to be reviewed by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And the last is JT versus de Blasio, U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, number 20-CV-5878. A suit alleging violations of the IDEA, Section 504, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and Section 1983 regarding school closures and provision of services to children with special needs during COVID. Thank you. And now for the roll call. Ms. Danzy.
Present.
Vice President Ahia Hinton.
Present.
Ms. Fix Lopez.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Huang.
Present.
Dr. McColgan.
Present.
Dr. MacGyver.
Present.
President Wilkerson.
Present.
Dr. Haidt.
Present.
Ms. Diaz.
Present.
And Ms. Alaleya. Closer. I couldn't hear. Yes, present?
Present.
Thank you very much. Okay, Madam President, that concludes this portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rout. Board members, before we proceed, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of the October 22nd action meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. The minutes are adopted. Oh, thank you. The minutes are adopted. I'm now going to invite Dr. Haidt to make his opening remarks.
Thank you, Madam President. And we will pull up a presentation for the board. First and foremost, I want to welcome Ms. Fix Lopez back. Welcome. Glad to have you back. So before I begin this evening's regular update to the reopening readiness report, I'd like to make some opening remarks. As we prepare for the upcoming holiday during a year that has been full of unprecedented or unexpected challenges, I want to share some things that we are very grateful for here at the district. First, as was announced on Tuesday and by the board president, the University of Pennsylvania made a generous donation of $100 million over the next 10 years. This donation will help us to accelerate the remediation of environmental hazards such as asbestos and lead in our school buildings. We've been making steady progress certifying 110 schools as lead safe to date and removing more than 300,000 feet of asbestos containing materials since March. But there is much more work to be done. Our operations team will be working diligently in the coming weeks to determine the next phase of environmental improvement efforts to be supported with these funds as we work to make every school a safe and welcoming environment for our students and staff. Next, I am also excited to share that the School District of Philadelphia has been invited to participate in the POSSE program through the POSSE Foundation. Our high school seniors will be eligible to attend one of the POSSE partner colleges and universities who provide scholars with full tuition scholarships, weekly faculty mentoring, and other support. Additionally, students accepted into the program will also receive career development support and mentoring. We are very grateful and excited that our students will now have this opportunity to participate in this program that will provide them with the opportunity to learn, grow, develop, and ultimately succeed in competitive institutions of higher education at no cost to them. And finally, I want to note that this is Transgender Awareness Week. While we know that the lived experiences of transgender people cannot be limited by a week, this effort is aimed to bring awareness to the movement. We recognize that the voices and experiences of one member of a community may or may not reflect everyone in that community's voice or experience. Our intention is to hold a space for the many diverse perspectives within our community. I encourage each of you to use this season to reflect on what you are both grateful and hopeful for during this time. Now, I'll present a regular update to the district's reopening readiness report. Next slide, please. I'll begin our reopening update with our hybrid learning implementation pathway. As a reminder, since our last update, we have determined that all schools will remain fully virtual at this time. We made this decision based on the most recent updates and guidance from the Philadelphia Department of Public Health, the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and Pennsylvania Department of Health in response to rising case counts in the city and nationally. This means our plans to begin transitioning to a hybrid learning model later this month are on hold, and all students will continue with 100% digital learning until further notice. As a result of this change, we have changed the anticipated date of the majority of the remaining tasks along the pathway to be determined, or TBD. Given we have met or are very close to meeting each of the checkpoints we can track at this time, we're going to pause our regular readiness updates until cases begin to decrease and Philadelphia County has been back in the moderate classification for 1 week. Then we'll reestablish dates for the rest of the pathway and resume tracking of hybrid school operation plans, delivery of professional development, and other relevant indicators on our website. We will begin the process of transitioning into hybrid learning once Philadelphia County has been moderate for 2 consecutive weeks. Next slide, please. As you know, the readiness report is based on 6 key reopening milestones. I'll run through each one individually. Next slide. The first milestone is digital enablement. Nearly 112,000 students, or 91%, have now received a device from the district. Just over 1,200 district households have successfully connected to the internet through PHL Connected. In total, more than 12,000 families have now the digital access since the beginning of this pandemic. We recognize that many of our students still lack internet access, and for that reason, the status for this indicator is yellow. We will continue reaching out to targeted families to support them in acquiring access, and are also working with the city to improve awareness and enhance communications. And I'll just add here that while some individuals may be connecting to the internet in multiple ways, they may be using a cell phone or through some other provider or through some other paid program, we want our families to take advantage of this support, which is at no cost to many of them. Next slide, please. We're also tracking the installment of document cameras and speakers in classrooms as part of our digital enablement indicator. The 2 graphs on this slide show progress as document cameras and speakers are ordered, shipped, and delivered to schools. 1,500 of the needed cameras and 1,500 of the needed speakers have been delivered to schools. 28 schools have had this technology installed in all necessary classrooms. Over the coming weeks, we will be supporting schools in identifying classrooms for installation based on maximum occupancy of various classrooms. Next slide, please. Next, I'll discuss our academic milestone. 100% of guidance for hybrid instruction and updated guidance for hybrid support for students with IEPs and English language learners has been drafted and finalized. This milestone is complete. Our upcoming key activity is to review data from the first quarter to identify strengths and areas for development in instructional programming, professional development, parent workshops, and other areas. Next slide. Our next milestone focuses on staffing coverage. 99% of teacher roles and 100% of principal roles are filled. We also have approximately 125 supplemental teachers available to support. For general cleaners, we are still over 99% staffed at this time. We have removed the data about the number of applicants in queue here, given this item is complete. We continue to monitor whether we will have an adequate number of substitute teachers to provide coverage when we return to physical buildings. We currently have over 1,013 substitute teachers available, which is an adequate number for digital learning. However, when we return in person, we know we will need additional substitutes. Kelly Services continues to increase recruitment and marketing, and the district continues to create positions for and to deploy building-specific substitute teachers. We completed a hybrid staffing coverage check on November 6th for the anticipated November 30th return and confirmed we had adequate staff to implement that model as designed. However, we will complete this coverage check again when we get closer to transitioning to hybrid learning. Another important step related to staffing will be to determine how we will close the estimated $33 million budget deficit that was recently presented by our Chief Financial Officer, Ori Munson. A portion of the plan for these savings will inevitably need to come from a savings in salaries via potential staffing cuts, especially given we are no longer returning to buildings in November. We're working on a proposed strategy with a goal of minimizing the impact on students and on staff who have been working in their buildings during all stages of the pandemic. Next slide. The next milestone is building readiness, which we are tracking through the completion of all health and safety readiness components and the completion of building ventilation certification. Currently, 216 schools have been fully cleaned, bathrooms have been confirmed as fully operational and stocked in 216 schools, and water fountain and hydration station bubble heads have been closed in 220 schools. Hand sanitizing stations have been installed in 205 schools and partitions in 215 schools. We are in the process of following up individually with the schools that are not yet indicated that these items are complete. The second category is ventilation certification. Currently, 166 schools have been fully assessed. An additional 24 schools will not be assessed by air balancers because they do not have operational ventilation systems. 17 of those are schools that are home to pre-K through second grade students. This means we are approximately 90% finished in assessing all schools, and we are 100% finished assessing schools of pre-K through second grade students. Ventilation challenges in these 24 schools are not being immediately corrected because they will be addressed as part of a longer-term capital improvement project. As already noted, we are working to establish fresh air flow in those buildings through other means. We'll track fan installation separately for these schools when we resume tracking after Philadelphia County has been in the moderate classification for 1 week. Aside from the social distancing and medical waiting room health and safety measures, which will be tracked via principal submission of hybrid school operation plans, 148 schools are now fully ready. Our key activities include onboarding newly hired general cleaners and completing building walkthroughs with School District of Philadelphia leadership and union partners. Both of these activities have already begun and are ongoing. Building walkthroughs have been completed in K-8 buildings, but still need to occur in high schools. Next slide, please. Our fifth milestone is focused on people preparedness. All planned professional development for Q1 has been delivered. Hybrid specific PD has been put on hold until it is again safe to transition to hybrid learning. Before this change, we had delivered 223 unique PD sessions to pre-K through second grade teachers who were scheduled to transition to hybrid learning. When it is safe to transition back to hybrid learning, we will resume tracking of this professional development. Moving on to communication, 50% of the hybrid reopening communication plan has been executed thus far. The plan is, of course, being adapted to reflect changes to our reopening timeline. The status for this milestone is currently on track. Next slide. Our final milestone is operational readiness. The due date for hybrid school operation plans has been changed to TBD, or to be determined. We will set a new due date based on Philadelphia County's case count designation. We will track receipt here once the new date is determined. We have delivered all PPE to schools, but principals will also confirm receipt of PPE in their hybrid school plans. Moving on to meals, as of last Friday, since the beginning of the year, we have served more than 1 million meals to more than 100,000 students. And since we've been out, we've served well over 5 million meals to hundreds of thousands of students. Next slide, please. Finally, and separate from the readiness report, we are engaged in regular accountability monitoring. The attendance rate for the beginning of the school year through last Friday was 90% for K-8 and 92% for grades 9 through 12. 64% of students attended 95% or more of all enrolled days through October 30th. Shifting to assessments, in grades K-12, 84% of students participated in the required English language arts screener and 80% in math during the testing window, which closed on October 23rd. Of the students who participated, 33% tested at target in literacy and 39% tested at target in math. Finally, we conducted a survey of parents, guardians during the first few weeks of the school year. Nearly 9,000 parents and guardians from more than 300 district and charter schools provided responses. About 2/3 of survey respondents reported that they are satisfied or somewhat satisfied with their child's digital learning experience so far. Parents of younger students and parents of students with IEPs reported feeling less satisfied than did other parents. More than 70% of respondents felt that the amount of communication they received from their child's school, the district, and their child's teacher is about right. About 40% of respondents reported that their child is not engaged with school as they were before school was online. Open-ended comments included feedback on communication and highlighted the hard work and dedication of all of our teachers. This concludes my updates, and I'm happy to take any questions, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Height. I'm going to call for board member questions. Ms. Dancy, Ms. Fix Lopez, and Ms. Vice President Ahia Hinton, do you have any questions or comments?
Just one. Dr. Height, the schools that you said they weren't assessed because indeed they didn't have a system and you're going to have to create the ventilation for them. Did you say those were mostly schools of K through 3? And after we put in the fans, I imagine that's what we were talking about in order to create the ventilation, will they then be assessed for airflow? And if we can't bring them up to par, even with what we put in, what plans do we have for how we will then transition those students to where it is healthy?
Yes, it was 24 schools in that category of schools that assessments are not being completed because they don't have operating ventilation systems. I believe 17 of those are K2 schools or serve K2 students. And once the fans are installed, we would then come back and do another assessment to determine if in fact the airflow is appropriate. for those areas. And if it's still not appropriate for those areas, then they would then have a score of 0, which means no one could occupy those spaces.
Thank you.
And I believe the question is, those students then would remain remote, or would they be relocated to other buildings, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, so we would, number one, we would have to determine what those schools are and how many children in those schools have signed up to return, because parents still have an option to return their children or not. And we are anticipating that there will likely be some spaces in the school where there will be appropriate ventilation. So we may not use the classrooms that were first designed or reserved for those students, but we could use other spaces in the building if in fact those classrooms have a rating of higher than 0.
Dr. Height, my question has to do with the, I forget what slide, that had to do with the digital technology, the number of households that still didn't have that. I'm assuming that we're tracking that, and have we been able to lower that number? I'm not sure what the total number was that we started that didn't have that access, but are we making strides toward actually getting connected with those households? Number one, and number two, are we using some of the community organizations or the churches, et cetera, that tend to be in the community, that might be in the community where some of these families are, to maybe outreach to those households?
Yes to both of those questions. And so to the first question, some 11,000 families have now enrolled in that program. And either we actually just rolled them over to the program because they had signed up for the Internet Essentials and it expired after 2 free months. Those individuals were automatically rolled over to the new program. And we know that some 12,000, I said 11,000, but 12,000 households have now enrolled or received a mobile hotspot. And however, our numbers were based originally, and this is why this is so hard to track, and numbers were based originally on asking a survey question or asking the parents a question about Comcast or Verizon, and understanding that some may be connected through other means. And so we're trying to also understand that. So we've been working with the city, who are also working with all of the carriers, where we could then match addresses to whether or not that household or that residence actually is enrolled in a program, not necessarily the Internet Essentials. And yes, to your second question, we are engaging community agencies. As a matter of fact, we have the city's chief of technology, I think, is meeting with the parent advisory group, the board's parent advisory group, to actually get ideas on other groups that could be used to get the word out. And that's why, and our teachers have done a great job, our principals have done a great job bringing to our attention those individuals that are not logging on or may not have access. But we want families to take advantage of this, since it's a service that has been provided and is paid for 2 years.
My last question has to do with the impact of, since virtual learning has now been extended and children are not in school buildings, I'm realizing, not just in terms of what I'm seeing or reading, but I'm realizing even in my own family, with the children that I have in my own family, or I'm watching some of their reactions to not being able to go to school, and just the stress and all that other kind of stuff. Even if we don't have a presentation or anything today, I'm just wondering, like, what we're doing in terms of behavioral health services that are working with our kids, just addressing some of these areas, because children, I'm not saying they're acting out or anything like that, but I'm looking at it and seeing it in my own life, and just starting to see like different things that children react, because it's a stressful situation and they're getting bombarded by a lot of noise about COVID, etc.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, and I think it would be wise to come back and do a presentation on all of the behavioral health services that we have introduced and now are providing. And more importantly, we have families and children who are now taking advantage of those services as well. Because to your point, there's a lot of stress associated with young people, particularly at the younger ages, and many of our older students who have not been able to socialize with their peers in a normal way. But we have done some pretty significant work through the behavioral health providers that are now working in their schools. You know, we've now assigned a behavioral health counselor to every school. So we have that resource as well as the work that we've done with the Healing Together and training our staff members. So I'd love to come back and do for the board a full presentation around all of the resources that we have been providing and the fact that families have been taking advantage of those resources. And we will only see that increase as we approach the holidays.
Ms. Fix Lopez?
Yeah, Dr. Hay, I want to go back to the 24 schools that you had mentioned, but first, thank you for the welcome back. It is good to be back, but I also want to give a huge thank you to all the other board members that covered for me for the last couple of weeks. I know it was probably some of the busiest weeks that we've had so far. So I really appreciate all of their extra support. So my question, I have a couple questions, but the first one is, and Ms. Danzy kind of already asked it, but you said about the 24 schools, you said you're going to stop and not do the air balancing testing on those schools and explained why. But to go a little bit further on Ms. Danzy's question, who is going to determine if that new fresh air that you're bringing in is adequate? Is there somebody, I don't know exactly technically how the air balancing works. Does that person come back then and do the testing for the fresh air? Is there a different kind of test? Or is it, for example, like a building engineer that determines it?
No, it's the same process. And so the air balancer will be brought back in order to do that.
Okay, so at the end of the day, all schools will have gone through the same process. They're just having different means of how they're getting the adequate air.
Yes.
Fresh air. Okay. And then, I'm sorry. I know that a lot of the timelines are TBD, but was there, just so teachers and families and parents would have the time to prepare in advance, is this something roughly that will be done before the end of 2020? Or?
You mean the air balancing reports?
These schools in particular, the air balancing and these schools in particular.
Yeah, so we hope to finish those before the end of this calendar year, correct?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
My next question.
And we're tracking the installation of those fans, which, and then once we track that, then we go back and do the monitoring of the.
Okay. My next question was around, you talked about the Ames Web and STAR assessments, and you mentioned that 33% scored proficient on ELA and 39% on math. And I know you might not have this off the top of your head, but do you know what the comparison is at this time last year for those?
Yeah, and it's hard to compare one year to the other, board member Fix Lopez, because this year we had so many more students take that assessment. So, and I'll use an example. So we saw an increase in the performance, particularly in, I want to say math in fourth grade. And it went from like 38% who were at target to 51%. But we're not celebrating that because last year 300 children took that assessment. This year 8,000 kids took the assessment. And so it will be hard to compare from prior years. The comparison should happen now when we do this assessment again in the next testing window. Then we can look at who was on target at tier 1 and either not on target in tier 2. That would give us a lot more information. It's just hard to compare one year to the other.
Okay, and
Yeah.
Can you, without going into a lot of detail, can you explain why last year was such low numbers? I mean, STAR is newer for us. Is that the reason why? Yeah,
typically our lowest numbers. Well, this is the first year we've had STAR for all of the kids who took STAR.
Okay, right.
And so our goal was participation.
Okay.
And our goal was to make sure teachers had information about the students in their classrooms in terms of where they were and what they needed to work on so that we can design whatever the supports are for that. But as I indicated before, this was new to a lot of students, and quite frankly, many of the high schools reported that they liked the STAR assessment more so than they've liked other previous benchmarking assessments. So we'll have more information before. Ames Web has typically been done at the early grades, and so that's been our assessment in grades in grades kindergarten, first, second, third. But we haven't done Ames Web math before, so that was new this year as well.
Okay.
So it was just new, and we wanted that assessment to be done so that teachers could have that information.
Okay. The reason I'm really asking is I got a lot of outreach, pretty significant outreach actually from several principals, really anxious about this. Obviously, the board ourselves, we have been shifting to really, with our new goals and guardrails that are coming out, really focusing on the data. And with such emphasis on it, and with also the fact that it's online and things are very different right now, and the stress levels and everything that we all know is happening right now, how is that going to impact student learning? We know it's going to impact student learning to a degree.
Right.
And so there is this concern that the numbers aren't really going to be accurate. Are people going to be penalized for things that they don't necessarily believe, indicate what the actual learning is? How can we assure principals and the community that this is not intended to penalize?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because it allows me once again to repeat something that I said earlier. Like, these assessments are designed for student level analysis. And what we want to do is understand, like, how far have students fallen off, or if they've fallen off at all, what should we, if in fact many students have, then how do we design supports and structures moving forward for them? This is to provide individuals with data about their children. And it was designed for schools to do that. And I'll just add, the K-5 was also added this year. So we hadn't been doing K-5, we've been doing K through 3. But this is new, and it's not meant to punish anyone. It's not graded, but it is to provide for teachers information about where their children are.
No, I appreciate that. And I think that it goes back to that trust issue. And I think that's something that the board ourselves are going to continue to show as we move forward with the new goals and guardrails, because I know one of the motivators for us is to look at these numbers and think about resource allocation also, and how that needs to be, potentially adjusted moving forward, depending on it. It's not necessarily to penalize one particular principal or school community. It's to look at the resources in particular. Okay, and then my last quick question, thank you for that. My last quick question is attendance. So you mentioned attendance rates that in general seem pretty impressive, especially the 90%, I think you said for this past week, was it? But my question just in general is, how are we measuring attendance? Is it they have to check into every single class? Is it who signs in homeroom in the morning? What's the standard?
So it's homeroom. If they've signed into homeroom, and then we do take class by class attendance. That's not factored into like this total number. So we could have 90% overall attendance, but there could be some classes with lower attendance simply because students not signing into or logging into that classroom. But we do have communities each morning, and some schools are doing that later in the day. And that's when we're collecting attendance for children. And we do that on a daily basis as well.
Okay, so it's the 90% attendance last week in homeroom.
Well, the 90%, yes. So those children logged in, someone saw them, and yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Next, we'll have Mr. Huang and Dr. McCulkin. Mr. Huang.
Okay. First, Dr. Hyde, I'm glad that you'll be saying more about Healing Together in a future meeting. Like you, I've been following the national news coverage on the deteriorating mental health for a lot of our teenagers due to the remote setting. I have 2 in my own home that I'm monitoring with some worry. So I appreciate what you've been able to marshal in response, and looking forward to a future report. And I'll reiterate another request for a future report on, COVID has forced us to into this interplay between teaching and tech platforms. And it occurs to me that even after COVID, there may be some lessons learned in that continue. and that allow us to drive student achievement better and potentially more equitably. And so I know that you've been keeping tabs within district schools, lessons learned from charter schools, lessons learned as you talk with other large urban school districts. And so I would just reiterate a request that at some point down the road, some best practices, some lessons learned that can help us feel like, even though this has been a really terrible season from a student achievement process standpoint, that maybe there are some lessons in there that we can grab onto and use to our benefit going forward. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Dr. McColgan, do you have any questions?
No, I also don't have any additional questions. Board member Ahia Hinton already asked the questions I was going to ask in regard to mental health, as Mr. Wong was just saying. So thank you for all you're doing. I am really concerned about, the students being out of school for such a long period of time. We are definitely seeing tremendous increases in childhood depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation and attempts. And so you guys already know how concerned I am. So I'm eager to hear those reports as well as supports for teachers in regard to helping them to work together with their colleagues, have some time to, supports for them as well. Because I talk to teachers all the time and principals all the time who just say how depressing it is to be in the schools or in the classroom, in spaces where there aren't children, because we derive our energy. People that like children derive our energy from being around children. So I'd like to hear what we're doing for the teachers to support them as well.
Dr. McIver?
And before Dr. McIver, to Dr. McColgan's question, one component of Healing Together was also adult wellness, which is a part of that. So that would be a part of the larger report that we will do to the board. So thank you for that.
Dr. McIver?
Yes, I have just a few questions. I know that there's a number of school districts that have done hybrid, started out hybrid, now they've gone back to virtual, and there's a lot of challenges that are associated with hybrid learning. And what I've read, that there's no way to do it well. It just seems to be a very, very daunting and challenging task. So I'm curious, as we think about going, returning to school, we have this extra time to really be thoughtful about this, what lessons we've learned from schools that have gone hybrid and have found the challenges. What are some of those challenges and how are we thinking about those as we plan for implementation? That's my first question. So I'll stop there and then I can ask my other two.
Yeah, so part of that, Dr. McIver, was things that we were putting in place. And I talked about the cameras and the speakers and what we have found, because I do have some colleagues across the country where children are logging in to what's happening in the classroom, whether they're there or not. And it is allowed for a level of continuity, if you will. And so that's one of the reasons we recommended the cameras, and thank goodness the board approved that, and the speakers, because it allows for some continuity and stability for young people. And it hasn't been many districts that have been able to pull that off, and the training, and this extra time has given us more time to do some of that training. We started with, as I indicated before, training at pre-K through second grade teachers. I think the other thing is really looking at what structures or supports or instructional practices must be put in place to address the learning loss for some of the young people. And these things can't be done just with like a summer program or after school program or Saturday school. And so we have to look at unique ways to provide for those additional supports, and in some cases, additional instruction in a content area or a concept based on that assessment, based on some of the assessment results that we were talking about earlier. And then the third thing is really the structures for individuals to give constant feedback about what they are experiencing. And one of the things that we are seeing many people did a survey like at the beginning of the school year, and that's their survey. They may do another one next year. We are doing these repeatedly throughout. And as a result, we have made some adjustments to screen time. We've also seen on the latest questionnaires that there's a worry about screen time, again, particularly for some of the older children and our older students. And so we've learned that that getting that constant feedback is also helpful. And then finally, I'll say opportunities through the town halls or the meetings, town halls with principals and the town halls with teachers have been very helpful in allowing us to hear about best practices that are occurring that we could perhaps take to scale that are working for teachers who in many cases could help other teachers do this work. And so providing the opportunities to just talk, not just through the best practices, but to also talk through some of the frustrations that individuals are experiencing. I think we can't do that enough. And so we've shared that we're doing that with other districts who have also begun to do something very similar. So those are some of the things that we've learned. And then the other things are really health related, like how are they doing testing and how, and now we're talking about, are there ways that we as educators can get the vaccines prioritized for educators as a part of like a high priority. So everybody understands the health community, but the education community also being prioritized if a vaccine and when a vaccine is released.
I agree. You gave me a good segue to my next question that has to do with the survey. And on the monitoring student outcomes slide, everything was presented in terms of the percentage response except for the survey question, and it was given as a number. And so I'm really curious what percentage of parents replied, but also what was missing from that was the student response and the teacher response. And my biggest concern is that at the last action meeting, the survey response rate was very low. I think it was like 3% or something pretty low. And I want to know, are there things that the district can do to increase the return rate, particularly for teachers and students on these surveys? Otherwise, I feel like, you know, it's just taking up staff time, and it's not a significant number of data to make decisions on.
Yeah, I'll get you the data. I don't have that right in front of me of the respondents, and the teacher and student were lower than parents in this case. And so we are working on building support for individuals to hopefully get used to taking it, because we're doing this bi-weekly now. And we just, naturally, this was the first time, and people may have been a little leery or had a whole bunch of other things they were thinking about, but we want to make this a part of like an ongoing process. And so the encouragement is for people to take advantage of it because it gives us critically important feedback.
Is there a way to kind of harness maybe the assistant superintendents or, you know, their networks and, I don't know, some kind of contest for the number of people? This is, you know, I think this is really important data we need, and in terms of how we think about changes that we need to make just in general when we come back or not. And it's disheartening to see how few responses we're getting, and I almost feel like either we don't do it or we really push on staff and you know, at the principal level or the superintendent assistant sup level to have at least teachers and students respond. I think we have more control over that. Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, do we have any sense as to why they're not doing it?
Right.
Yeah, and I don't have the answer to that question, because naturally that'd be a survey question too. So, but I do think that you know, we just started, and there's a lot. I mean, people have a lot going on, and teachers were also going through training during this period of time as well. And I think as we do it more, we hope that it will build, principals are involved, assistant superintendents are involved, but I just think we just keep making sure that individuals know that it's out there and that we want their participation. And I think that our 2 student board members, board reps, could also help us push this with students. And I'm confident that the student level feedback will increase. And I'm confident that the teacher level feedback will increase as well, once they know that we're actually using the results to make decisions about PD, policies, practices, and all of those things.
Thank you. I have I think one more question. I actually had 2, but I'll just do this one last one. I know I keep talking about, everyone is so busy just kind of dealing with in the moment, but we also should be thinking about how what we're doing now can change the way we do schooling in the future. And one thing that came to mind is our calendar and conversations about the calendar. Now that we have, all kids are, 99% of kids connected with devices and teachers, and they're used to remote learning. Some things that we know can come off of the calendar are like snow days, right? Because we can just easily move to that. But the other thing that I was thinking is like quality of life decisions we can make now that we have this technology infrastructure in place that it could impact the calendar in ways that I think we should start talking about now, or at least putting it out there to teachers and schools in thinking about how we can do this, and how we can have asynchronous learning for some kids at home while teachers are able to bring in very small groups of kids who need intensive support. There's just so many ways we can be thinking about this, and I know it's really hard now because we're in the moment, with everything, but I just feel like we can't lose this opportunity to reimagine what schools can look like next year. And I will leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I think your last point is like a really important one. And it's one thing I forgot to talk about when you say, what did you learn from others? And so some districts prioritize with their hybrid plan, those students that you just talked about, and allowed for others to remain virtually where they were focused on those who were most in need, in addition to their complex needs and other vulnerable children. So we had already started talking about like, how are we thinking about young people who may be in trouble of not graduating, or may be in trouble of not having the sufficient credits, or through the assessments are way behind in math or English language arts. And so to your point, I think as individuals learn how to do this work more, we will get much better at doing that. And then based on that, we can think about calendars and those types of things very differently. Understanding, though, that we also have a bargaining agreement that really is defined by calendar days. And so, but it could change the conversation about that as well, to your point. So thank you for that.
Next, Ms. Diaz, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Dr. Height, I have a question about whether or not we have students who are missing. I know we didn't get the enrollment, the kindergarten enrollment we were looking for. Are we missing students? Not just, are they connected or not? Are there some kids that we would have expected to see that we don't see any place?
Yeah, I think and all of these numbers are together, I think the number is about 3,200 now of students that were slated to be in either a district public school or a public charter school who are not there. So the 206,000, I believe, have become 203,000. But those students have all either moved away or enrolled in some other program. But those students are students that we're down about 3,000 students, district and charter, with respect to total enrollment.
And that includes the kindergartners?
Yes.
I'd like to get more information about that, the demographics, then, are they, would that include homeschool, how much homeschooling is going on. Because, it's one thing to focus on connectivity, but to the extent that we have children who are just sitting it out, I think we need to know that, and we need to find those children. And with that, I want to thank you, Dr. Height, for the report and all the work that you and the staff throughout the district are doing. This month, the board held a joint meeting of the Finance and Facilities Committee and the Student Achievement and Support Committee. We'll begin with this report. Additionally, Dr. McCulkin, please be prepared to provide your update from the Policy Committee, and Board Rep Diaz will take your report after Dr. McCulkin. So, Dr. McIver, I think you're giving the report. First.
Sure. Thank you. Our joint meeting began with a presentation from Alicia Prince, Chief of Staff, who reported on the school year 2021 reopening and digital learning implementation pathway dashboard. Ms. Prince also provided information on progress monitoring for the procurement of supplies, facilities readiness, academic progress, and digital enablement of classrooms. Throughout the meeting, board members asked clarifying questions to understand social distancing guidelines that will be monitored, alternative ventilation for buildings that need additional sources of ventilation, and the number of families that have opted into the hybrid model. I will not be summarizing the report, as you heard more recent updates from Dr. Height in his report earlier in this meeting. Board members did not ask any questions on action items related to student achievement on tonight's agenda. Our committee heard from 2 public participants who provided testimony. First, we heard from Lisa Haver, a community stakeholder, who provided comment on the proposed elimination of Board Policy 141 and the non-renewal hearings of Universal Bluford and Universal Daroff charter schools. Second, our committee heard from Sherry Michaud, a community stakeholder who expressed concerns regarding challenges faced by students who are English learners in accessing the high school application process. While we did not receive any charter school updates during our committee, I would like to invite Christina Grant, Chief for Charters and Innovation, to join us. Ms. Grant will provide us with an update on the new charter school applications that we have received. Before she begins, I would like to announce that the board will hold its first hearing on these applications on December 22nd, and we'll be sharing more details on this in the coming weeks. Ms. Grant, welcome.
Good afternoon, board members. Again, Christina Grant, Chief of Charter Schools and Innovation. This evening, I would like to give the board and members of the public on the new charter applications that were received by the Charter Schools Office on November 15th of 2020. So as you all have heard or may have been aware from previous presentations, we are in the middle of our process for the 2020-2021 cycle of new charter application evaluations. As indicated, applications were due on November 15th. Public hearings will take place between December and January of 2021, with an anticipated board action between February and March of 2021. Per statute, we must have our first hearing within 45 days of that application. And as previously stated, that will take place in December, on December 22nd, and additional information will be provided by the Board of Education. Wanted to give a quick snapshot with a visual on the applications we've received. We have 5 total applications, 2 that are applying for K-5 schools, 1 for a K-8, 1 for a K-12, and 1 high school application. I won't read through the graph, but wanted to give you all a snapshot of the total enrollment requested in total across all applications, and then give you all a visual on where these schools are proposing to be located. At scale by 2026-27, it would be a total of a little over 4,000 seats across 5 schools. The submitted applications, which I will walk through briefly, are as follows: Aspira Bilingual Business, Finance, and Technology High School, Empowerment Charter School, Eugene Maria de Hostos Preparatory Charter School, Philadelphia Collegiate Charter School for Boys, and Pride Academy Charter School. I'm going to briefly walk through each school just for public consumption. All of this information is available on the charter school's website, which can be found at www.philasd.org. The Aspira Bilingual Business, Finance, and Technology High School. The mission is to envision a supporting and inclusive school environment where all graduates develop the academic and professional expertise to be successful in their post-secondary life, regardless of their intention to join the workforce, military, attend a trade school, or college. Students at this school will experience a responsive and inclusive bilingual and career-oriented curriculum. The management affiliation for this school is Aspira Inc. of Pennsylvania. Their proposed location is 6301 North 2nd Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 19120. And you can see that they have requested enrollment preferences for zip codes 19120, 19134, and 19140. Again, the initial grade request for year one, which would begin in 2021-22, would be 600 students. And this school at scale is seeking to apply for a school that would have an enrollment cap of 1,200 students. The next school I would like to discuss and want to note that as we are reviewing the application, some details about this school may change, is the Empowerment Charter School. The Empowerment Charter School has a mission to create classrooms in a school community where our learners feel welcome, safe, and confident to pursue goals that reach beyond their potential as they grow into advocates and servants in their community and ultimately activists and leaders in our country and global community. They have an affiliation with Jounce Partners. Their proposed location is 5210-5218 North Broad Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19140, and they also have enrollment preferences for zip codes 19140, 19141, and 19144. Their proposed target grade enrollment at launch year, which is in 2022, is 234 students, and at scale, they seek to be a K-5 school serving 504 students. Eugenia Marina de Hostos Preparatory Academy, again, my apologies. Their mission is to provide a bilingual, bicultural, and academically rigorous program in English and Spanish that enables students to achieve their maximum potential in all aspects of life through cultural and community experiences. Their students discover their potential, achieve readiness for college and careers, and succeed in a safe and caring environment. Their management affiliation is Aspira Inc. of Pennsylvania. Their proposed location is 4322 North 5th Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19140. They also have enrollment preferences for zip codes 19134 and 19140. They are seeking to open during the 2021-22 school year with an initial enrollment of 690 students. At scale, the school would seek to enroll 1,035 students. And the last school that we have received an application for is, this is the fourth school, is the Philadelphia Collegiate Charter School for Boys. The Philadelphia Collegiate Charter School for Boys seeks to provide the finest liberal arts education possible to Philadelphia's next generation of young men, ensuring that they will become global citizens trained to learn, lead, and serve our community, our nation, and our world. Their management affiliation is Five Smooth Stone Foundation. They have a proposed location of 7500 Germantown Avenue in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19119. They have proposed enrollment preferences for zip codes 19119, 19126, 19138, 19140, 19144, and 19150. They seek to open during the 2021-22 school year with an initial enrollment of 220 students, and at scale, again, we are piecing together parts of this application, but at scale, we believe the enrollment will be 1,268 students. and this is the last school, Pride Academy Charter School. Their mission is to provide a rigorous, engaging, and comprehensive education that will allow all students to learn with confidence, connect what they learn to the real world, and wholeheartedly embrace education. They do not have a management affiliation. Their proposed location is 2106 East Haynes Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19138. And they do not have an enrollment preference. This school seeks to open during the 2021-22 school year with an initial enrollment of 180 students, and at scale, the school would serve 360 students. The next steps of this process are largely set forth by charter school law, and I reviewed briefly at the start of this presentation. We've begun the evaluation of each application. In accordance with Pennsylvania charter school law, public hearings will be held for each application. As stated, the first hearing is scheduled for December 22nd. The Board of Education will share more information on this hearing in December, and more information again on each application can be found on the charter schools website at philasd.org/charterschools. I will pause now to see if there are any questions.
I don't think I see a question from Mr. Long.
Ms. Grant, most of the applicants have enrollment geographic preferences, and some of those geographies overlap. I wonder if you could summarize what, if any, latitude do we have by state law to account for an applicant wants to serve an area, multiple applicants want to serve the same area, the area is or is not served well by existing district or charter schools. Are those criteria that we have latitude to account for in our review per state law?
Somewhat yes, somewhat no. The applicants are applying for different grade spans, opening at different times. We'll be able to look at schools that are in those communities and just be able to address if there are areas where this type of school or this grade span would be needed, but we aren't necessarily able to say in accordance with charter school law, oh, this community has too many K-8 schools, therefore X, Y, and Z. That's outside the purview of the law. But we will be able to give you a snapshot of this is the community, these are the schools in this community, and this is what this application would be seeking to add to that community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. I don't see any other hands. Next, we will hear from Mr. Wong, who will share a report from the Finance and Facilities Committee.
Thank you, President Wilkerson. We received 2 reports from staff related to finance and facilities during the joint committee meeting. First, we heard from Ori Monson, Chief Financial Officer, who provided us with a financial update. Mr. Monson shared a preview of the district's fiscal 2021 Q1 report, which was released on November 13th and posted to the district's finance website. Key updates include a reduction in local tax revenues due to the pandemic, which has resulted in a projected deficit for the current fiscal year. The 2021 fiscal year fund balance is now projected to end with a negative deficit of $33.1 million. Additionally, Mr. Monson noted, while revenues are declining, the district's operating expenditures are projected to increase due to COVID-related spending, food services expenditures, unbudgeted labor contracts, higher than projected TRAN increases, increased charter costs, and the district's decision to not level staffing resources this year. Second, we received a report from Reggie McNeil, Chief Operating Officer. Mr. McNeil shared an update on numerous capital projects that have been completed during the school closures due to the pandemic. Updates included information on the new school construction project for Powell and Slams and modular classrooms at Mayfair, Meredith, and Powell, classroom modernizations at 11 schools, major maintenance, repair, or replacements of systems such as HVAC, roofing, lighting, and structural repairs at 20 schools, and stormwater management, and parking improvements at Central High School. Full reports can be found with materials of our meeting. Board members did not ask questions on action items related to finance and facilities on tonight's agenda. Board members did ask for an update on the new school on Ryan Avenue at a future meeting. We heard from one public participant, Diane Payne, who is a community member who raised concerns about facilities readiness for hybrid reopening. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Are there any questions or comments from board members, including Ms. Diaz? If you could use the raise hand facility. I'm not seeing any questions. And so with that, we'll turn to Dr. McCulkin for an update on work of the policy committee.
Thank you, President Wilkerson. The policy committee did not meet this month. However, I'd like to highlight some information on tonight's agenda listed under action item 1, adoption of proposed policies. Draft policies and administrative procedures listed in action item 1 were reviewed by the policy committee at our September 3rd and September 10th meetings. These draft policies are related to academic programs, charter schools, employees, finances, and operations. The Charter School Policies 400 series are also being updated in order to articulate the board's guiding principles on charter authorizing, delegate authority to the Charter Schools Office to manage oversight and implementation of these policies, and to create administrative procedures that outline these processes. The goal, as always, is to update the policies as part of our routine maintenance of our board's policy manual. And our goal is to review each policy in the manual at least every 5 years. Thank you, President Wilkerson. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. McCulkin. Board members, if you'd use the raise hand tool, if you have any questions. I don't see any hands. Next, we'll have a report. Oh, yes, I do. Ms. Fix Lopez.
I'm sorry, I just have a question for Dr. McCulkin. I appreciate the tabling of policy 141 for further discussion. Can you just remind me of the timeline on that? When will we be talking about that?
So the next policy meeting is in February, and part of the reason that policy got tabled was we decided to cede the time to the town hall meeting for the goals and guardrails, because we are, as you know, prioritizing our goals and guardrails work so that we can pivot and shift our discussions toward student achievement and monitoring that student achievement to make it that priority. And so that was pushed to the February meeting. I believe it's going to be the February meeting
Okay.
to discuss at that time. And then hopefully that the secondary benefit of that is the Equity Coalition, which has a different name, Office of Equity, I think, will be hopefully looking at the policies as well as the rest of the community to give us more feedback.
Thank you.
I don't see any additional hands, and so we'll now have a report from Ms. Diaz. Kalisha, would you please give your report?
Thank you, President Wilkerson. On October 31st, 2020, Tolu and I participated in the second annual RISE Youth Summit. This year, the summit brought together about 200 students from grades 5 through 12 to discuss the impact of gun violence on our local and school communities throughout the city of Philadelphia. Unfortunately, many students throughout the district have been directly or indirectly impacted by gun violence. Whether it was a family member, friend, or even a classmate, we know that gun violence directly impacts our ability to be successful in and out of our classrooms. The second RISE Youth Summit provided us all with a safe space and an opportunity to share our experiences with gun violence and also to discuss solutions that we can do to support our communities. During the summit, students spoke about the desire to be more educated about their city, participating and enacting positive changes in their communities, and developing a better mindset and increasing awareness. Since the summit, Tolu and I have continued to engage with students who participated in the dialogue about ways to better help school communities and encourage all students throughout the district to engage in these tough conversations and be leaders within their school communities. In addition to participating in the second annual RISE Youth Summit, Tolu and I hosted a student town hall meeting along with board member Dr. McDiver and board member Huang. Our town hall focused on the topic of the board's goals and guardrails. During the town hall, students asked questions about how the goals and guardrails will change their school experiences and how they can get involved. Tolu and I felt it was important that our peers have an opportunity to provide their own feedback on the goals and guardrails, since they will have a direct impact in our learning and our overall experiences at our schools. Also, it was a good opportunity for our peers to become more aware of the Board of Education and the work that you guys all do. Tolu and I believe that it is essential that our peers know that we need to be challenged by our teachers, work to improve our reading and math skills, and lastly, that our schools are there to provide us with resources and skills that we need to make sure we are prepared for when graduation comes. Also, we received outreach regarding how can students get involved with the Board of Education and become student board representatives. Students who may be interested in applying for this position should continue to check our social media pages and the district's website. Applications will be available in the spring months. We encourage our classmates and peers to get involved with this work and continue to reach out to us via email or through our social media pages at PHL Student Reps. Thank you, President Wilkerson, and that concludes our report.
Thank you, Kailisha. Do any board members have questions for Ms. Diaz?
No, but President Wilkerson, I did want to correct something that I said previously, if okay. When I was answering Board Member Fix Lopez's question, I was thinking about policy 206 rather than 141. 141 won't be going back to committee. That will be, I believe, on the agenda at the December action meeting, because that has already been through policy committee. And we're waiting for you to come back for the December meeting so that we could have discussion at the December meeting. So my apologies. I was thinking of the wrong policy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any questions for Ms. Diaz. And so now I will turn to Ms. Danzy, Board Member Danzy, to introduce this month's Parent and Community Advisory Council, PCAC, member and provide an opportunity for that report. Ms. Danzy.
Each month, we've asked a member of the Parent and Community Advisory Council to provide us with a report that includes feedback from students, parents, and members of the community. This month, we'll hear from Christiana O. Christiana is new to the Parent and Community Advisory Council and has worked hard to ensure that she brings forward great insight from her school community in South Philadelphia. Christiana, would you please provide us with your report, and please accept my apologies if I have butchered your last name, and would you state your name so that I won't make that mistake again?
Apologies accepted. It's Christiana Oy, like O-Y. Good evening, President Wilkerson, members of the Board of Education, and community stakeholders. I'm a parent of a 4th and 1st grader in the School District of Philadelphia. I am also one of the newest members of the Parent and Community Advisory Council representing South Philadelphia. This evening, I'm here on behalf of the Parent and Community Advisory Council to share with you all the work that the Council has engaged in over the last month and feedback that we have received. During the week of October 26, pairs of Council members hosted 4 community-based town hall meetings alongside Board Member Danzy and President Wilkerson on the topic of goals and guardrails. Communities and stakeholders engaged in these town halls included school administrators, students, parents, caregivers, and community members from North Philadelphia, West Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, Kensington, and Northeast Philadelphia. During these town halls, stakeholders learned more about the board's goals and guardrails and asked clarifying questions to better understand how the board's vision would impact student learning experiences. Additionally, stakeholders urged board members to ensure that funding for arts and cultural programs were made a part of the curriculum used across the district, and that grade level goals consider the abilities of all students, including those who may fall below the measurable goal the school board and district want to achieve. In addition to the goals and guardrails town halls, as a council, we also attended a briefing and feedback session with members of the Mayor's Office of Education on the City of Philadelphia's PHL Connected program. During the briefing, council members showed concern that the city may not be engaging with the right partners to go into the most vulnerable areas of the city where the PHL Connected program may have the most significant impact. Council members also encouraged the city to work with their partners to employ individuals in these vulnerable areas to get these services started for people in those communities. Additionally, one council member suggested that the city create a job program through PHL Connected for high school students to develop skills which could lead them to being career ready upon graduation. Finally, council members have continued to provide feedback on student virtual learning experiences. Council members reported connectivity issues continue to persist in access centers and other group-based learning environments. Teachers are spending a lot of time dealing with tech issues, which reduces the class instructional time and classes fall behind schedule. Children have no socialization time in this learning environment and are chastised by teachers when they try to connect with their classmates in Zoom meetings. One child asked if they could have some period of time built into the day for just that. Parents would prefer if all work assignments were due on Sunday instead of each evening because parents are still working. Teachers need to be in the class with kids so they are able to walk around and help students with math problem-solving skills. Students are asked to do quizzes and tests independently, but some are failing because they do not understand the instructions and could ask their teachers questions in an in-class environment. I share part of the feedback I have received with you tonight because it is important that the school board and district continue to hear concerns of the community and hopes that tweaks can be made to improve the virtual learning experience for everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight, and I look forward to continuing to work with the Parent and Community Advisory Council and the School Board of Philadelphia. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Oy. Are there any questions for Ms. Oy? Ms. Danzy, do you have any further report? Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. McCulkin, I see your hand.
No, I actually did have a question. I meant to ask that earlier in regard to kids not answering. What I see in my own kids and when my kids' friends, sometimes kids are not asking questions of the teacher because it's easier to just text a friend or whatever. Are we doing anything to try to encourage kids not to use their phones during the day and to ask their kids instead, or communication with parents in regard to enforcing, let's put away the phone so they could pay attention type of thing? Because I'm seeing that I sometimes have other kids that I watch that come over and they have their phone in their hand the whole time because their parents aren't enforcing it. So I just wonder what we're doing to help with that.
Dr. Height?
Yes, some of that, Dr. McCogan, is, and I want to thank Ms. Oye for the recommendations as well and the comments from the parents in that community. But to your point, Dr. McCogan, some of it depends on what children are working on, because some things, if it's some sort of asynchronous types of activities, sometimes they are encouraged to work with other students as well. But when it's synchronous, that is something that individuals are, in some cases, managing well, but in other cases, to your point, children are just not asking the question to the teacher, but asking it to a classmate. We've given out guidance for how individuals could do that work, but it almost becomes a feel thing for individuals, and as we do it more, people get better at it. But it all depends on the activities that children are engaged with.
Dr. Height, on the report, the issue as students were asking about, couldn't they have some time to, in the Zoom, to link with other classmates so they can, I'm sure what they're saying, so they can feel a sense of that they're in a class, that they're in a community of their peers. Is there any way that can be worked into? I mean, I know our teachers are overwhelmed as it is, but so that maybe that might help with some of the mental health issues that absolutely are going on with our young people.
Yes. Board Member Danzy, some of that is happening now. So one of the reasons we instituted Zoom was to allow for breakout sessions and breakout rooms for young people. But I do think that it's a level of comfort of teachers in many cases, but the asynchronous learning allows for children to engage with other young people doing some of the similar work. Some of the comments that I heard that are really interesting to me is like work being due on a Sunday versus every night of the week. And that's something that we've heard from multiple students. Also heard the screen time and the engagement of young people, particularly with adults in classrooms. But to the extent that there are opportunities for breakouts with students, many of the students, there are groups that can do that now. Some feel more comfortable in allowing students to do it than in other places. But I've seen it in high school classrooms, but I've seen it in elementary classrooms as well. But I've also seen places where, I mean, it's a lot of teacher-directed instruction, and that's a product of our professional development as we help people look at ways to engage children differently. Particularly as given what Dr. McIver said earlier about like who can deal with asynchronous types of learning activities while teachers are working with children who need more like staff or adult help. And that's, we just, as we get into classrooms and look at instruction to determine what individuals need, as teachers share practices with each other, as I indicated before, in some places we're getting better at it, but it's just something that we're continuing to develop individuals on, utilizing those resources.
Ms. Olaleye, I see your hand up.
Yeah,
Tolu.
thank you. Thank you, President Wilkerson. I'm personally coming from me as a student.
Can you speak up a little? Can you turn your volume up just a bit?
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Personally coming from me as a student when it comes to the interacting with your teacher online, I know a lot of kids have anxiety when it comes to that. In classrooms, you're able to raise your hand and like speak freely, and your classmates won't really think about it. But online, you would have to unmute yourself and talk, and you can't. And for Google Meet, you can't really private message your teacher, which is why with what Dr. Height said, Zoom really does have that better feature with breakout rooms, and you're able to private message your teacher. Because for me in my AP Calc class, I'm comfortable with my Calc kids being able to like ask a question when I don't understand something. But there are sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to ask a question and then make it seem like I'm not getting it, but everyone else is getting it, when overall no one is really getting it, but everyone is too scared to ask the teacher a question. Right. And I noticed that our teachers, they're trying their best to like bring out that courage in us to speak up and talk and make it seem as if we're still back in class in person, but just trying to find that normalcy and making kids understand that it's okay to ask questions, even virtual. The other students probably have the same exact questions that you're asking. But yeah, that's what I have to say on that.
Dr. Height?
No, Tolu is right. I mean, I think that's what we've heard when we talk with young people around the city. And it's some of the feedback that's helping us to develop the professional development with individuals who are doing that well. We're also asking students, I mean, what types of approaches could we take as adults to get them more comfortable with asking questions, to Tolu's point. You muted, Joyce.
Thank you, Ms. Diaz.
Yeah, so just as like a recommendation, I was talking about this with my English teacher when we're in the, breakout rooms. Something she suggested that kind of spoke out to me was being in a classroom setting, like her personally going to school, getting in that classroom setting. I'm just thinking, is there a way where, teachers can go to, their classrooms and teach from there? Would that help with students? And Tolu, if you would like to, answer this also, but would that help with students and anxiety, with their mental health, actually feeling physically in a class, maybe seeing a teacher there?
Ms. Diaz, I think the answer is yes to that. And we have, and as we clear classrooms, teachers are free to go to their classrooms to utilize the classrooms as their place of instruction.
Tolu, did you want to add something?
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like that would definitely help in a way, because it would make us miss school and miss the classroom. Definitely, to get that kids like, yeah, I'm here, even if you're not here, I'm still here. So yeah, that would be good.
Thank you. Dr. McIver and then Ms. Danzy.
I think this speaks to the conversation that we had earlier in terms of what are the ways that we can change the way we do instruction. And I know that when we shifted to this online model, it was really difficult, and we kind of just shifted what was happening in the classroom happening, remotely. And I think there are opportunities for teachers to not have all students in class and maybe be able to have office hours, if they can't go into the class remotely, some flexibility in that. And again, I don't want to get in the weeds. I just would love to hear the conversation that is happening around that. And the students have such great insight into what kind of supports we can think about to reimagine what we do in schools.
Yeah. President Wilkerson, I had asked my question, but I will say I'm glad, Dr. Height, that you are looking at, and as you're saying, from the statement that we got from our board member, that if we could do something so that I guess that what they're really saying is, can you make homework just at one time? Because I've talked to parents, and I've seen some of them say they're on Zoom all day, and then at night they've got to do homework. And it's kind of overwhelming to them to some degree.
Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that, Board Member Danzy, and see Tolu and Kalisha smiling because they brought this up at the student advisory meeting, and really trying to manage and this is part of managing screen time for high school students who, in some cases, these two described being in classroom 7 hours a day and then having 2 hours of homework that's also online or on the computer. So that's why we made the first set of recommendations around screen time. And we're going to continue to do that as we get feedback from teachers and students and families.
Thank you. I want to thank our Ms. Diaz for the student rep report, and thank you, Tolu, for your participation. Ms. Danzy, thank you as well. Next on our agenda is hearing from our registered speakers who are registered to speak on action items we're considering at this meeting. We'll hear from speakers on general topics later in our agenda after we voted on tonight's business. If you're registered to speak on an action item this evening, this is the time to ensure you're logged into the meeting with the information shared by our staff person earlier today. And I'd like to acknowledge the written testimony we received for this meeting. Board Member McIver, please share information on the written testimony that's been incorporated into this evening's record.
Thank you, President Wilkerson. The board received 6 pieces of written testimony. If you would like to read these in full, please go to our website to view our electronic agenda where the written testimony is posted in full with the rest of this evening's materials. I will group comments about the written testimony by subject matter. Brandon Archer, student at Masterman, stands with the Philly Black Students Alliance in calling for the 2 student board representatives to be given voting rights and requested the administration continue to be held accountable for being anti-racist. Sherry Michaud had several questions and concerns related to the status of student Chromebooks, internet access, and average attendance in virtual lessons. Dr. Michaud also inquired about the availability of charitable funds to resupply schools with resources such as pencils and crayons that could be distributed to children in under-resourced homes. Blair Downey expressed concern regarding several issues, the topic of which included such things as climate staff continuing to be required to work in school buildings amidst the new shutdown restrictions, the location and hours of the 3 parent and family technology support centers not being equitable or able to properly serve students and their families, student board members having the ability to vote, and requesting the school board refrain from voting on any items until fully staffed. Diane Payne urged the board to make no changes to policy 141 and to begin the process of honest acknowledgement of the failure of this initiative to deliver dramatic change, followed by a decisive and strategic action to reclaim these schools. Ella Schwab feels every Philadelphian should have reliable, quality internet access, stating many low-paid support staff who live in the same neighborhoods as our students are also experiencing the same shoddy internet connection, which does not enable them to do their job effectively. Ms. Schwab also stated families need real multilingual tech support and tech literacy opportunities that include more than being funneled through language hotlines. Lastly, Donlyn Kaser, who is registered to speak this evening, shared her concerns about the impact of gun violence on the lives of our students and asked the district to be more actively involved in the prevention of gun violence in our communities. This concludes the written testimony.
Thank you, Board Member MacIver. While we work to provide a full overview of the written comments received, I remind everyone that you're able to read the full testimony for yourselves. Full copies of written testimony are available on our website and will be made part of the record of this meeting. And with that, Ms. Rauch, would you please share our speakers policy and then call our first group of speakers?
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for your input on school district matters and issues, including the proposed actions being discussed tonight. To respect every speaker's time, we will be strictly enforcing the 3 minute per limit, 3 minute per speaker time limit, excuse me. There's an electronic time prompt that will be shared as a tile on the screen. When the yellow light comes on, you'll have 30 seconds to finish your comments, and when the red light comes on, your time is up. Student speakers, elected officials, and those speaking on action items have been prioritized on the agenda. Up to 4 speakers will address the board on each topic. Written testimony submitted in advance of the start of this meeting will be included as part of the record of the meeting. When I call your name, your line will be unmuted by the host and you may begin your testimony. Please remember there's a 2-minute time lag between our live stream and the Zoom platform. So as we approach your speaker number, please make sure that you're by your phone or computer, whatever device you're using to access Zoom. If you miss your speaker slot, we're not able to go backwards. I'd also like to note that the board's policy asks that registered speakers refrain from any remarks of a personal nature, considering individual staff members or other persons. If you have complaints against employees, you can file those with the Office of Employee and Labor Relations. And more information is available for you on their website, or you may email employeerelations@philasd.org. Per this policy, President Wilkerson will be interrupting individuals in the event that comments are made naming an individual, and our staff person will be muting your line as you're speaking. Thank you. I'm actually we have 12 registered speakers on action items, so I'm going to call in groups of 6 tonight so that you're ready. Our first speaker is Kaylin Ali, and then Shayla Street, Rebecca Allen, Tatiana Rodan, and Kurla Milius and Ramir Jones. Is Kaylin Ali here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You can begin.
Good evening, Dr. Height and members of the school board. My name is Kaylin Ali. I'm a 7th grader at Frederick Douglass Mastery School. I do like the school a lot because of the security. The area where the school is not very good, so I like that they are there to protect us. I feel safe. I like that the school provides us with things we need. Like today, I had to go pick up my books, and the school had them available to me. We don't have to worry about purchasing books or having old material. The school provides us with everything we need without having to find our own resources. It wasn't like that at my other school. I also do like that the teachers, even on Zoom, provide help to the students, even after classes on homework or on other things. Not currently, but when there was school, I loved the playground where we could sit and converse. It was very nice. I do miss that. The events during school week and on Zoom are very great. During school, we had parties and even celebrated our teachers. Douglas is full of encouragement and celebration. We are always celebrating and appreciating one another. For example, after Kobe Bryant's death, we had a Kobe Day, a day to celebrate his accomplishments and highlight good things. Douglas is a great school. I am on the track team and I was on the cheerleading team. After we did track, those experiences were very good. It was my first year. Just being able to be on the cheer squad and track team helped me reach out to more people, and they were very kind. Since the pandemic happened, I believe that classes have been better. We have the entire day to complete and submit our work. I can't speak for everyone, but my grades have been better than ever before. I'm also thankful for the teachers and how much they help us get through the classes and how much they contribute to what we have to do. My brother is having a good experience too. We had a really good transition coming to Mastery Douglas. I'm learning about civic engagement. My mom took me and my brother to Harrisburg with the Mastery Parent Action Team. I think the trip was excellent. I was so surprised to see how big the legislators' office are. I was happy that we got to talk to legislators and tour the state capitol building. We were there to talk to them about taking away special education funding and so us.
Is board staff on? I think Kaylin Ali's may have cut off. Is she still on the line? Does she want to finish?
Stand by.
Yes, that was it. I finished.
Oh, okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Shayla Street.
Hello, my name is Shayla Street, and I'm a senior at Central High School. Thank you for giving me and my peers the opportunity to continuously attend, speak, and serve at the meetings, but we want more. We demand to have full-fledged student reps on this board. We demand voting rights. I stand with the Philly Black Students Alliance and calling for the 2 student representatives on the Board of Education to be afforded voting rights. It is crucial that students be given the power to help decide the fate of their own education. We must be able to have strong influence on a board that is supposed to serve us. And just saying, if y'all give us some voting rights, maybe we will be participating in your surveys. The time for waiting is up. Subsequent to the school board's formation, students and family were excited to see a new era of representation being ushered in. However, we're still waiting for students to be included. Why? I don't know. The students who serve on this board dedicate the same amount of time you do. The only difference is that the things that you guys are voting on directly impacts them. We demand that any group set to govern the district not only consists of individuals who share the sentiments and identities of our 200,000 plus students, but our community members dedicated to being fierce advocates for our youth, for us. This is an urgent necessity that the board understands the intersectional issues that have been presented to us and turn to collaboration to find tangible solutions, to prioritize the voices of the people in moments of pain, pandemic, and pride rather than corporations such as Hilco. This begins with modifying the structure of the board to grant the 2 appointed students voting rights. The voice of students must be heard. They shall not be regarded as inferior, nor shall they be requested only to fulfill a requirement and later disregarded in a vote. As said by urban advocates, every school board across the country should have voting student members on the board. Student voice matters, and we strongly believe that the only way to change education is to have youth present at the table. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Allen.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Allen. I'm a student at Central High School and a member of the PBSA. I also stand with the Philly Black Student Alliance in calling for the 2 student representatives on the Board of Education to be given voting rights. It is crucial that students be given the power to help decide the fate of their own education. What we are doing, what you do, it all affects them, and we demand that they are no longer ignored. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tatiana Roldan.
Hello, my name is Tatiana Roldan, and I'm a 17-year-old student at Northeast High School. I stand with the Philly Black Student Alliance in calling for the 2 student representatives on the School Board of Education to be given voting rights. It is crucial that students be given the power to help decide the fate of their own education. What we are doing, what you do, it all affects them, and we demand that they are no longer ignored. My testimony is going to be short for one reason. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired with the lack of representation for Philadelphia Black students. Please start doing your jobs and hold administration accountable. Speak to your students about their experiences and their demands, and keep our parents involved and educated. We refuse to continuously ask nicely for change to be made in situations we should not have been put in. We are students of Philadelphia. We are your responsibility. We are your jobs. We have talked here once, and we will talk here again until the change we demand is made. Stop hearing us and start listening to us. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kurla Milius. Is Kurla connecting?
Ms. Rauch, we have to connect with speaker number 5.
Okay, are we waiting, or do you want me to go to speaker 6?
We should move forward.
Okay, speaker number 6 is Ramir Jones. Is Ramir Jones connecting?
Ms. Rauch, speaker number 6 has not logged on. Please move forward.
Thank you. Malcolm. Let me call the next group. Actually, the first speaker in the next group is Malcolm Margasak, and then Lisa Haver, Keziah Ridgway, Cecilia Thompson, Sinai Browning, and Linda Rubin. So, Malcolm, you can start.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Height and school board members. 54 years and 2 days ago today, 3,500 students walked out of class down to 440 North Broad, where they demanded an end to vocational tracking, an African American history course, and the removal of police officers in schools. When they got there, they were beaten and arrested by Rizzo's police force. Although they were regarded as criminals that particular Friday, they are now regarded as heroes. Their work paved the way for the district's mandatory African American history course, which made Philadelphia School District a trailblazer when it came, as it was the first major city to require that course. And if I remember correctly, the school board commended a group of students this year who worked to get a historical marker commemorating the '67 student strike. But if you really want to honor those students who walked out in 1967, you need to honor the demands of those students today. Our demand has not changed in 54 years. Remove police officers from school. There is no evidence demonstrating that school police officers make students safer. Conversely, the increased presence of police officers in school is linked to increases in school-based arrest for minor behaviors and negative impacts on school climate. You seem to really be concerned about students' mental health, and we are too. This is the goal of this demand. Research and the experiences of countless students, educators, and families have taught us that police in schools create a toxic school environment and fuel the school-to-prison pipeline. Additionally, when the school infrastructure itself is physically toxic to students, spending $40 million a year on police seems like a misappropriation of funds. If you really believe education is the great equalizer, it's time to join other districts from across the country that have ended their contracts with police departments. You have a spring budget session coming up. please shift the money from policing into counseling services and other things that directly impact the quality of students' lives. If you believe in the future for Philadelphia Public Schools children, then you actually have to invest in them. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Lisa Haber.
Good evening. Speaking on item 2 and the issue of equity and contracts, but first I want to say how disturbing and offensive I find the district's decision to recruit public school students for a grit lab as reported in today's Inquirer. Studies published in peer-reviewed journals in the past 2 years have identified problems with the notion of grit. Researchers are finding that grit is not strongly associated with academic achievement and that other skills are far more powerful than grit. The premise of the grit model is that if kids could just improve themselves and make better decisions, they could succeed. Just don't mention that they attend underfunded schools without basic resources, or that they have been traumatized by gun violence, or that as Black and brown children, they are treated as second-class citizens, or that they are expected to be grateful when Penn or somebody flicks a few crumbs their way. District leaders should not be buying into this program, which has a built-in absolution for its own failure to provide what our children need. The grit industry sells little more than a rebranded pull yourself up by your bootstraps message. Action item 2 raises the question of how and why some schools have more than others, which would then mean that some students don't have to be as gritty as others. Friends of Chester A. Arthur, according to the item, has raised money to pay for improvements for school grounds. The Friends of group reviewed, according to the item, reviewed proposals from various contractors, chose one, paid for the work through fundraising. Since tonight's agenda is relatively brief, I'm hoping the board can answer some questions. Are non-district employees allowed to negotiate contracts for work to be done on district property? Are non-district employees permitted to decide what spending priorities are for district schools? The item also raises obvious questions of equity, that a school with a active parent group with resources to vet and negotiate contractors and is able to raise tens of thousands of dollars can improve its grounds, while other schools still have unabated lead and asbestos issues. Should families in schools without Friends of groups just learn how to be grittier? I want to end by saying that I'm going to ask all the members of this board to advocate for the public and to ask the mayor to open the nominating panel hearings to the public. It is really a disgrace that the people you hear tonight, the advocates, the special ed advocates, a person coming very soon after me, has nothing to say about who sits on the school board. And I urge you as the school board now to say something about that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Keziah Ridgway.
Good evening. My name is Keziah Ridgway, and I'm a teacher at Northeast High School, member of the Racial Justice Organizing Committee, Melanated Educators Collective, and one of the NSR non-student reps for Philly Black Students Alliance. I'm here today to speak about action item 12. I want to send a shout out to all the activists, organizers, and in particular, Penn for Pilots, for putting pressure on the University of Pennsylvania to make payments, particularly for the benefit of Philadelphia public schools. While this is a great step and it's long overdue, we also want the public to be aware that Penn is worth billions. And right now, the school district of Philadelphia will need almost $1 billion to truly fix all of the issues that plagues our school district buildings. In addition, Penn's current president, Amy Gutman, has a salary of $3.6 million a year, one of the highest in the nation, and a decrease from $3.9 million in 2016. University of Pennsylvania and other universities who do not pay taxes should be making payments to the school board. In addition to this, I want to shine a light on our brilliant student activists in the PBSA, and I support their request to have students voting rights on the school board. Finally, November is Native American Heritage Month. As the month draws to a close, families around the country will be celebrating the holiday of Thanksgiving. I implore the school district to provide resources to its teachers that highlight the true story behind the holiday. It is more grim than the story currently told in our classrooms. As a member of Racial Justice Organizing and Melanated Educators Collective, we put forth demands over the summer, which included the development of Native American and Indigenous Studies courses. Does the district believe that its Native American students matter? Do they not deserve to learn about their culture and history in authentic ways? Do non-Native students not deserve to learn how their Indigenous friends and neighbors were treated and continue to be treated? If your goal is equity and racial justice, that includes the Indigenous population too, who are also students in this district. And finally, I just want to say, as a teacher with children, 2 things. Number 1, teaching via Zoom is extremely hard. And I don't know if any of you have had time or practice or being able to be in a classroom with teachers, but we don't have extra teachers. I'm lucky to have a student teacher, but other teachers don't. And when you don't have a student teacher, it's hard to put kids in breakout rooms. You don't know what is happening when you're not with them. And so please take that into consideration and really understand that we teachers are working very, very, very hard. There is not a time when I am not working, and I know that I am not alone. And finally, while I do miss our classroom and I do love our students and I do always want to check in on their mental health, I do want to make it known that I think that we should, it should be voluntary if teachers want to go in the building, but not something that's mandatory because many of us have children. And the last thing I will say is, as a student that comes from North Philly and from the projects, I hate grit. It needs to not be taught in our schools. Please don't do that to our children. Get rid of that immediately. That's it. That's all. Have a great day. Bye.
Our next speaker is Cecilia Thompson.
Hello.
Yes, you can start.
Awesome. My name is Cecilia Thompson, and I want to speak about Board Policy 126 on class size. I'm requesting that the Board of Education put a pause on voting on this due to the current COVID situation. Per the policy, the maximum class size for grades K to 3 is 30 and 33 students for grades 4 to 12. These numbers need to change as this pandemic will be around for at least another year. And once a vaccine is tested, confirmed, and ready per the government for human consumption, there's no guarantee families or school staff will take the vaccine and want to come into school buildings without proper social distancing. Possible scenarios, number 1, with some families and educators wanting to continue social distancing, you won't be able to put 30 or 33 kids in the class, but a smaller number. Another scenario is with the increase in virtual learning, there needs to be a number for which teachers can teach these children virtually so that there is maximum success in their education. And then another scenario, what will be the maximum number for a teacher to teach students in person and virtually in their class? Is not going to be 33. And as we just heard from the last speaker, teaching virtually is a challenge. And to do this with 33 students or in a hybrid situation may not work for the benefit of the student. Moreover, there's a section for students with disabilities which states, and I quote, the capacity should not exceed student to teacher caseload levels for special education students as determined by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. As somebody who is part of the cyclical monitoring for continuous improvement team for the last 12 years, the PA Bureau of Special Education does not change much. Therefore, I'm requesting that their numbers be part of that document, as well as a link for families and the community to see what the Bureau is saying in regards to these numbers. While everything is not about money, these class sizes cannot be about money, but about safety. This is not a wish list. Per our current situation, the rise in COVID cases is due to proximity among individuals. While the research from Europe indicates children not contracting COVID, adults in the building, and especially those with pre-existing conditions, are susceptible to COVID. So please consider putting.
Next speaker is Sinai Browning.
Hello, board members. My name is Sinai Browning, and I am a junior at SLA Beaver, and I am also a member of the Philadelphia Student Union. I am testifying in solidarity with Malcolm Maragaz, whom you have already heard speak at this meeting. In the year 2020, things have been hard for many Americans, and high school students in Philadelphia are no different. We have been put to the test during the school year, and we feel that this school board has not done its fair share of caring for these students and teachers. COVID has been stressful on high school students, and the fact that you have been pushing for these schools to be open when they deal with terrible ventilation systems, thus leaving parents, teachers, and students ill-prepared, is jeopardizing our health and safety. The lack of communication and collaboration of young people is also a major problem. These updates that Dr. Hyde spoke of earlier are surprising to me because there are so many students that had little to no info of any of these updates or surveys, which could be scaled to double check that you are getting this information to all students in the school district. You have also given the young people the notion that they are too young to be focused on harsh topics such as police brutality when we are in meetings with you. We have dealt with this before in Policy 805, where it showed that you seem to care more about the metal detectors in schools more than the new ventilation systems. The fact that you guys understand the student struggle of school is great, but there are many steps that you have to apply to give the most help to all of us students. So what can you do to help us? Reach out to all students, not just citywide and special admin. Allow us to speak out more about topics that are plaguing our communities so that way you have more research to help us out. I hope that this message shows at least how some students feel during the moments of unrest and stress throughout 2020. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker for this section of the meeting is Linda Rubin.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'd like to state once again that historical data about the specific reasons for the creation and monitoring of any program is critical to understanding whether that program is reaching its goals or not, and in any increasing cost to the district. The districts and the board's homogenizing revisions and elimination of much of the goals and guardrails language about Renaissance charters from other charter policies plays into the hands of whoever is looking out for the interests of Renaissance charter schools to eventually morph into regular charter schools. Perhaps the elevated collaboration with charter companies and acceptance of money from PSP and other wealthy backers is seeping in. Lawyers use different language than us. Wording or omissions of words in regulations such as these is done for a reason. For those shaking your heads, it may or may not be your purpose, but it is how these changes and exclusions will reshape the district's future. For example, there is no mention of Renaissance charters in the new Policy 400, charter monitoring structures, or their specific creation and status for monitoring. The only language references to Renaissance charters left in proposed 401 charter authorizing functions are: a Renaissance charter is a former district school that serves students in catchment areas. And by the way, Renaissance charters have always remained district schools in district-owned buildings, not former district schools. That needs to be corrected. Also included is Renaissance charters are granted greater autonomy in exchange for increased accountability, and the provisions may be used as a basis to renew, not renew, or revoke the Renaissance charters. Completely removed is the phrase, the district has the discretion to renew, terminate, or modify the charter. Basis to does not mean the same as discretion by the board. The proposed elimination of Policy 141 is currently on hold due to outrage by stakeholders, but the purpose and creation of Renaissance charters is being removed from the record of all policies. The removal of the sentence, intervention into Renaissance schools to protect students' academic interests, health or safety, or to protect the fiscal interests of the school district is a critical removal. The use of no more than a paragraph or two defining and/or oversight of Renaissance charters, it is reasonable to assume that the board and district are slowly removing the differences between Renaissance charters and regular charters. Why else remove explicit language about Renaissance charters, which former board member Chris McGinley called a failed and overly expensive trial that should be terminated? Let's remember that the newly state-created MCSO, Multiple Charter School Organization, answerable only to the state, is just waiting for more charter chains to increase their number of schools before they secede from the district altogether. If Renaissance schools become regular charters, entire neighborhoods of schools could be severed from the district. Thank you.
That's the end of the speaker portion of the meeting, Madam President.
Thank you. Did Carla Milius?
I understand that we were not able to connect with her.
Okay, thank you. It's now time to vote on our action items. Before I begin, I want to be clear about how I'll be grouping tonight's votes. At this time, I'll only be pulling out the personnel items, items 3 and 5, noting that action item 4, approval of personnel terminations, has been withdrawn. The items that are going to be voted on as a group are the following: action items 1 and 2 and 6 through 12. Before we vote, does anyone want to pull out any of the action items in this group to be voted on separately? I don't see.
Sorry, this is Mallory. I couldn't find my hand fast enough. I'd like to pull out 2.
Okay, we will also then pull out item 2. So first we'll begin with the personnel action items. Board members, can I have a motion and a second to consider action items 3 and 5?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Rout, please call the vote.
Thank you. Ms. Danzy?
Yes.
Vice President Ahia Hinton?
Yes.
Ms. Fix Lopez?
Yes.
Mr. Huang?
Yes.
Dr. McColgan?
Yes.
Dr. McIver?
Yes.
President Wilkerson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is action item number 2. That is let me read part of the title. Action item number 2 would be the acceptance of donation from the Friends of Chester Arthur for the berm resurfacing project. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments about action item 2?
I just want to make a couple of comments, and it probably is no surprise because I've talked about it before. So I have been myself involved with fundraising for a variety of elementary schools. I have donated money to my local elementary school. I have helped organize them for my local elementary school. For other schools, donated raffle items and such. I 100% believe that the fundraising is important for the communities. The problem is, I think it is the board's responsibility to look at the inequities that we have around fundraising capabilities. I think when you look at places like Penn Alexander, for example, that are getting new playgrounds when other schools have none, to me is unacceptable. Greenfield Elementary is just getting their update. Again, I think what the parents are doing for the fundraising is needed, is appreciated. Again, I have done it myself for years. I think it is our job, though, part of the inequities is we've talked about the capacity, the know-how to be able to fundraise. And it's not just fundraising from community dollars at bake sales, it's the ability for the schools to have the capacity to do the grant writing. So I will vote no on this because we talked about it a couple of times, but I think we have to address this in the policy committee meeting the next time, even if it's just talking about it, figuring out what we all think, how are there ways to go and look at this from an equity standpoint. I have looked around to see what other places are doing. Some places have buddy systems where if you're fundraising as a school, you're fundraising as with a partner school also that maybe doesn't have the capability. So an example would be Penn Alexander would be paired with another school that doesn't have historically the ability to fundraise like that. So buddy system seems to be what some other places have used. And so I just asked that we would have that conversation at some point soon.
Can I add to that? Because I agree with you, Mallory, and I want us to be intentional about putting that conversation on the at somewhere, and that we involve the Friends Up groups that are very powerful in raising money in our gentrifying neighborhoods. And, I agree. I live in the Penn Alexander neighborhood, and I completely agree with you that we need to have these conversations, and I don't want it to end
But I'm sorry, I think that you have to bring, and I hope I'm saying the right name of the group that does the fundraising, Dr. Heiss, is that the Philadelphia Fund?
Fund for the school district.
Fund for the school district, right. I mean, I've spoken with them about this issue regarding the fact that there are some schools that may not have the skills, the ability, the resources, etc. And I know that they're working on a number of things and initiatives, and maybe that's part of what needs to be done in terms of bringing them to the table to talk about what it is that they're doing as well. Because my bent is that I think that parents, no matter what school they're in, should be commended for raising money. But I do agree that there are schools that maybe that's not an activity that they can do for a variety of reasons, and that we should look at how it is more equitably spread, at least in terms of helping other schools get to that place.
Are there any other comments? We can then put this either on tee it up for policy consideration, or have a briefing where we bring more parties to the table so that the board can better understand what is going on now, what options might be for proceeding in the future. Seeing no other comments, though, it's been moved and seconded that the board adopt action item 2. Ms. Rauch, please call the vote.
Thank you. Ms. Danzy?
Yes.
Ms. Ahia Hinton?
Yes.
Ms. Fix Lopez?
No.
Mr. Huang?
Yes.
Dr. McColgan?
Yes.
Dr. MacGyver?
Yes.
President Wilkerson?
Yes.
Thank you. Action item 2 passes by a vote of 6 in favor and 1 opposed. Thank you.
Our next items are items 1 and 6 through 12. May I have a motion to consider action items 1 and 6 through 12?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Are there any comments or questions about any of these items? I'm not seeing any hands up. Ms. Rauch, please call for the vote.
Thank you. Board members, I understand there are 2 abstentions as to one of the items, so please state that separately. On items 1 and 6 through 12, Ms. Danzy?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Ahia Hinton?
Yes.
Ms. Fix Lopez?
I'm abstaining from number 12 as Penn is a client of both of my small businesses, but I'm voting yes to the rest.
Thank you. Mr. Huang?
I'm abstaining on 12 due to my affiliations with Penn. I'm a yes to all others.
Thank you. Dr. McColgan?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. MacGyver?
Yes.
President Wilkerson?
Yes.
Thank you. Items 1 and 6 through 11 pass unanimously, 7-0. And item 12 passes by a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed, and 2 abstentions. Thank you.
We've done items 3 and 5, right?
Yes.
What am I missing? This brings us to the end of our action item consideration. We will now consider, no, this is it, right?
Yes.
We voted on everything, right?
Yes, we voted on everything. There had been one item for the intermediate unit, but
That's
it was
been
withdrawn.
Okay, it's now time for our speakers on general topics. Ms. Rauch.
Thank you, Madam President. The first 5 speakers in this portion of the meeting are Dawn Lynn Kaser, Siobhan Almodovar, I apologize for mispronouncing that, Kristen Lubert, Nathan Matson, John Stewitz, and Lori Mazer. Dawn Lynn Kaser, you can start. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Height and members of the Board of Education. My name is Dawn Lynn Kaser, and I work with the school district's 20 programs in the Opportunity Network. In 6 years of coming to board meetings, I've never spoken during public testimony. I believe in letting our students and families have this space. Unfortunately, too many of our students have been silenced, not because of COVID, but because of gun violence. Tonight, I ask your help to stop this silence. The school district recognized the loss of 20 class of 2020 seniors during our virtual graduation in June. I relive that memoriam every time I tell one of our network schools about another student or recent graduate that has been shot or killed. As Ms. Diaz mentioned earlier, awareness is critical. My first ask is your help to raise awareness across the city about the impact of gun violence on our students and to focus these discussions on our schools. As of Sunday, 149 children under 18 had been shot and 18 more children killed in the city this year. Yet this statistic hides the reality our schools deal with every day, especially as rates of violence increase at age 18 in the city. Our students are not defined by their age, but by being a student, a member of their school community and this district. Do you know how many of our students have been shot this year, this week? How many have been killed? We should. We consider the impacts of gun violence on all of our students shot, students living in the household of a victim, or as a member of an impacted school community. The district has recently made positive changes here to identify and support the siblings of victims of gun violence, but this is just a beginning. The millions of dollars spent on classroom technology and PPE will do nothing to help our students see graduation and their post-secondary futures if they are not with us tomorrow. We must ensure the schools disproportionately affected by gun violence have the dedicated, equitable resources they need. My second ask is that you ensure city efforts and community partners target students specifically and make sure that this programming connects across the short term and long term to support students, not just at the moment of crisis when prevention intervention activates, but in the weeks and months and years ahead for that student to ensure their success. A shooting occurs in an instant, the recovery can take a lifetime. We must also act to prevent violence. When I discuss this with colleagues, I often hear gun violence as a city problem, a policing problem, a gun control problem. It is all of those. It is also a school's problem. When our students disengage or drop out, this is an everyone problem, as these lost students too often become victims of gun violence. In October, at least 19 of Philly's young adult shooting victims were disengaged and had not graduated from high school. Some dropped out themselves, others were dropped automatically from the rolls due to non-attendance at the beginning of the year, all but forgotten. The Opportunity Network now works with the Office of School Safety to re-engage victims of gun violence without a high school diploma, but dropout prevention at scale requires resources and policy change. My third ask tonight is that this be forefront during your policy and finance committee discussions. These are our children. We are responsible to ensure their futures are limitless too. My final ask of the board tonight is to stop this silence and recognize, remember, and honor our students lost each month during these meetings. We should know their names, the names of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Siobhan Almodovar.
Hi, good evening. My name is Siobhan Almodovar. I am a parent of a third grader and a first grader that attends Mastery Prep Elementary School. If you're not familiar, Mastery Prep Elementary School is Gillespie Middle School. It used to be Gillespie Middle School where I used to attend as a child. I learned about Mastery Prep through just a random focus group that I found on Facebook that I just decided to be a part of. And by the end of that focus group, I found out that Mastery had bought the old Gillespie building and was turning it into a new school, and I was so excited. My children may have the opportunity to attend my old school. So I applied. I didn't think I would really get in, but lo and behold, my oldest child got in, and that's where our Mastery journey began. We've been there since 2018. I have my son did first, second, and now he's in third grade there. And I also was able to bring my younger son, who at the time when my third grader started, he was going to preschool all the way in South Philly. I was able to bring my children together in one school and not have to travel all over the place just for my kids to get an education. I'm so happy Mastery was able to do something in my neighborhood and my kids were able to attend a great school. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kristen Lubert, and I will note that speaker number 17 is apparently not participating tonight, so speaker 18, John Stewitz, will be after Kristen Lubert.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can start. Thank you.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Height. My name is Kristen Lubert, a teacher, community member, and member of Racial Justice Organizing and the PFT. I was glad to hear you were all concerned about students and how they can do better with remote learning tonight, because I want to talk to you about something that needs to happen right now in order to make remote learning better for our students and families: an extensive expansion of the parent and family technology support centers. The good news is that this is not a terribly difficult fix. The bad news is that I don't know if the will to do it exists with the board or with 440. As you know, there are currently 3 tech support centers, one in West Oak Lane, one in the far northeast, and one in South Philly. While those neighborhoods serve many students and are fine places to locate tech support centers, they leave huge areas of the city uncovered. West Philly, Kensington and North Philly West of Broad have no easy access to tech centers. A student in the neighborhood of my school in North Philly would have to travel for at least 40 minutes and up to 90 minutes one way on public transportation to get to a tech support center. A student at Strawberry Mansion would have a one-way journey of 60 to 90 minutes. A student at West Philly High would traverse 45 to 90 minutes one way. And the student at the Kensington complex would have a similar quest. Of course, this all supposes that SEPTA is running on time, that students can navigate several bus, trolley, subway, and L transfers, and that parents rightfully worry, as Ms. Kaser just said, about the increasing gun violence in our city, are comfortable with allowing their children to go hither and yon in unfamiliar neighborhoods in order to access tech support. Elementary age students would most likely need an adult to accompany them. Another barrier for our families are the inadequate hours of these tech centers: 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 4 days a week, and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. 1 day a week. These hours clearly do not consider working families or students who would miss at least half a day of school in order to get the Chromebook to a center. We have students who let us know every single day that they simply cannot get to these tech support locations. The board needs to direct the district to open at least 3 more tech centers in underserved areas of the city. In a school district that spends tens of millions of dollars on needless consultants, it should certainly not be necessary that a family must undertake a real-life version of the hero's journey in order to get some help with broken hardware. Please consider this unglamorous but necessary fix that would benefit our students both immensely and immediately. Thank you.
John Stewitz.
Good evening. My name is John Stutz, and I'm an ESOL teacher at Mayfair School. And I'm here to first review the negative consequences of the district's self-proclaimed safe reopening plans, and then to detail the kinds of changes the district and board must make in the months to come. First, know that we've been watching, and we remember what brought us here. Whenever the district has deliberated about the kind of school model to adopt during this pandemic, it has consistently made those decisions based on politics instead of science. We've watched as even last month you misled, shall we say, the city about the supposed safety of any reopening when you knew that cases were spiking. This farce has not only hurt the mental and emotional health of students, has not only prevented families from planning for their needs, but has also prevented all of us from prioritizing the improvement of digital learning, something we've been calling for from the beginning. That you have allowed such young students to be on screen for nearly 7 hours a day and provided next to no training for how to support their mental health beyond the first few weeks is appalling. That you've invested millions in document cameras for hybrid learning when you knew that such a system would never be safe for most students, and that money could have gone to any number of COVID relief programs or the ongoing asbestos crisis, should be seen as criminal. That you offer only a dozen PDs with only 30 seats apiece for a district with thousands of employees is evidence of your insincerity and the dooming fact of our collective mismanagement. You've asked for lemonade, but provided no lemons. And this whole time we've been watching. So what does all this mean moving forward? We need renewed thresholds for exactly when schools could safely reopen again that are clear to all stakeholders. Thresholds that will be honored. Words that will mean something. Does anything mean anything? We demand that you don't use us and our diminished emotional and physical energy for the sake of PR stunts. Recall that the vast majority of families didn't even sign up for your unsafe hybrid plan. So who that plan catered to, I still don't quite know. Just know that history has its eyes on us and you, the school board, the district, the mayor, and sure, let's throw in the governor too. And we certainly have our eyes on you, Dr. McColgan, after the way you push for high schools to return in person this fall. High schools, where outbreaks have been rampant in communities far less affected by the virus. And as well after the way your husband wrote a public message to Dr. Haidt on Facebook seeking to poach school district students, suggesting they should instead transfer to this Catholic high school. A conflict of interest and clear violation of Board Policy 007. I don't even have time to talk about the rest of the stuff, like students and families battling COVID, Comcast, and truancy court, all at the same time. But we'll continue watching closely. Our lives and the lives of our students and their families, no doubt, depend on it. Thanks for your action.
Our next speaker is Lori Mazer, and the group after that is Elizabeth Wesley, Reed Cohen, Nathaniel Bartles, Barbara Dowdall, and Miriam Milius.
Hi, I'm Lori Mazer. I'm a parent and member of Parents United for Public Schools or Public Education and Philly Healthy Schools Initiative. Exactly 1 year, literally, November 19th, 2019, Dr. Haidt, along with the board chair and members of City Council, announced an environmental safety improvement plan. If you remember last year, we were in the midst of another incredibly challenging time regarding asbestos in our schools and cancer in one of our teachers. And there was a huge outcry for action to be taken by the school district. For me and the folks at Philly Healthy Schools, and for a lot of us, it was a huge milestone and one that I thought signaled a true commitment to health and safety of our students and our staff and our faculty. One of the pillars of this plan was the creation of an environmental advisory board staffed with parents, students, community members, all these amazing resources that were available to the district. And for months, our group followed up with Jim Creedon and Danielle Floyd, suggesting names for this new group with no action. The majority of the goals in the safety plan were never met. No one in this board has asked for any accountability on these issues from Dr. Haidt or Mr. McNeil, who took over for Jim Creedon, who took over for Danielle Floyd. The facilities presentations now are just accounts of new buildings, and we rubber stamp capital improvements, and there's no longer an update of this plan that was initially announced with so much fanfare, but now is completely fizzled out. Currently, the lead safety working group, a stakeholder group that had been meeting for over 2 years, has not met since April. Our meetings were canceled, and we were told that Jim Creedon when he was replaced, the meetings would resume, as would plans for the Environmental Advisory Board. This has not happened. Tonight, as I look at action item 7, the authorization of capital projects, one of which I know is to demolish a mold-infested annex, I wonder how these priorities are created. I wonder where the environmental action plan updates that stopped being presented to the board in February 2020 have gone. I wonder why no one on this board seems to care about asbestos or mold or lead in our buildings, or if there's something the board is seeing that's maybe not being shared with the public. We are squandering time that we have where our students are not being harmed by our buildings by not pushing for a list of schools that are being remediated for lead, mold, and asbestos. We have been warned by the Inspector General's report on the Ben Franklin SLA debacle that staff turnover would lead to greater harm. As we lost employees who were accountable to reporting on environmental health and safety, we seem to have decided that it's no longer a priority. This is a huge mistake and one we will pay dearly for. Please ask Dr. Haidt for an update on the Environmental Safety Improvement Plan that is now 1 year old. And with a $10 million a year gift coming from Penn for facilities, the time has more than come to at least follow through with year-old plans that would introduce badly needed accountability.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth Wesley.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you can start.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Wesley. I'm an educator at Central High School and a non-student representative of the Philly Black Students Alliance. I stand with the Philly Black Students Alliance in calling for the 2 student representatives on the Board of Education to be given voting rights. I reiterate that it is indeed crucial that our students be given the power to help decide the fate of their own education. For a school district such as Philadelphia that proclaims to value student voices, it seems the right decision to make, especially as they are the largest and most impacted stakeholders of our educational system. We demand that their voices be heard and that they are no longer ignored. We demand that any group set to govern the district not only consist of individuals who share the sentiments and identities of our over 200,000 students, but our community members dedicated to being fierce advocates for our youth. There's an urgent necessity that the board understand the intersectional issues that have been presented to us and turn to collaboration with the youth voice to find tangible solutions to prioritize the voice of the people in moments of pain, pandemic, and pride, rather than corporations like Hilco or otherwise. This begins with modifying the structure of the board to grant the 2 appointed student representatives voting rights. The voice of the students must be heard. They shall not be regarded as inferior, nor shall they be requested only to fulfill a requirement and later disregarded in a vote. As stated by UrbEd advocates, every school board across the country should have voting student members on the board. Student voice matters, and we strongly believe that the only way to change education is to have youth present at the table. And this really should be happening not only at the school board, but across all boards in the city. We cannot wait amidst the pandemic and racial unrest to start listening to our young adults. We wait at the expense of our Black students. We want real representation on our school board, and that means we want the student representatives' vote to count. Secondly, while I do support student voice and vote, I'm not in support of teachers returning to school buildings to teach virtually. Maybe the students can help me understand, but I do not see the correlation between students' mental health and participation and teachers teaching in the building. Maybe we can change our backgrounds to look like school instead. I don't know. Lastly, on the premise of grit, in short, it's quite racist. Grit implies that we should continue to push oppressed, mostly Black and brown people in inhumane ways to expect them to make leaps and bounds to overcome systemic barriers created by white supremacy. Stop putting the onus on students who are faced with issues out of their control. I would suggest that we focus on the root causes, remove the barriers, and provide the necessary resources to help our students succeed, because grit is not it. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nathaniel Bartles, and I will note that speakers 21 and 24 are not going to be joining us, so we just have 2 more speakers. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I guess so.
Yes, you can start. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Nathaniel Bartles. I am a teacher at Wilson Middle School. Recently, we were made aware of the racist history of our namesake, President Woodrow Wilson. For example, he supported white supremacy, talking about the, quote, natural and inevitable ascendancy of the whites, unquote. He referred to African Americans as, quote, an ignorant and inferior race, unquote. He resegregated the federal government, including firing large numbers of Black employees who did not work menial jobs, claiming that, quote, segregation is not a humiliation, but a benefit, unquote. He was also one of the major intellectual forces behind the racist violence in the beginning of the 20th century. It is clearly untenable to continue to ask students and staff to come to a school every day which is named after a racist. Therefore, a committee of staff and administrators at our school designed a plan to change the name. This plan was overwhelmingly approved by staff and administration by a margin of 61 to 17. Students, staff, and parents and community members are now voting on a new name for our school. A letter of intent to change our school name will be sent to the Board of Education soon. Our hope is that despite all the pressing and very important issues around the pandemic, that our movement to change the name of our school will receive your approval so that we can proceed with this process. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Barbara Dowdall. You can start.
Thank you. Seeing the word tradition automatically suggests singing my remarks to the melody from Fiddler on the Roof. But I will cede that role to my Girls High Philadelphia orchestra mate, Eileen. Feeling sad today for my APS colleagues, Lisa and Deb, on the closing of their alma mater, Hallahan School for Girls. School Reform Commission traditions established in their 16-year reign, for those paying attention and attending their meetings, fall under a variety of categories. Started but not maintained. Truckloads of new textbooks. Staffing high school libraries with certified teacher librarians, though only for a hot minute. Initiated and sadly repeated. Judging schools on test data alone. Assigning them without consultation to outside management. Shutting them down despite community pleas. Handing them over to corporate-funded PR-rich charter entities. Happily not repeated. Abrogation of teacher contract. And ordering security to seize protest signs from people attending an SRC meeting. Disappointingly continued by Board of Education. Out of public view or knowledge, consultation with charter operators that allow their continued operation, not provided to public schools. Is Board Member Huang laying groundwork for next set of closures? Unacknowledged association via previous and current superintendents with billionaire Eli Broad associated or trained leadership. Puzzling proposed policy changes. Policy 141, elimination to be voted on in a future board meeting, made clear the school district's continued responsibility for and readiness to resume control of Renaissance charter schools. Living up to this responsibility would be an appropriate tribute to one who raised this issue, Dr. Chris McGinley, veteran educator and former SRC and Board of Education member, who has just, along with all of Philadelphia, lost his father, teacher, principal, and principal union leader, and family of educators patriarch, Daniel McGinley. Looking at my time, I would just note that I did graduate from Fiddler School in 1958. It was built in 1897, and it still has a concrete play yard and no equipment or soft surfaces. I thank you.
Thank you. Oops.
President Wilkerson, may I just ask a question about because this was brought up by many speakers tonight about the voting for the student board members. What is the reasoning that student board reps were not given voting rights?
I actually had just texted Claire Landau, our chief of staff, and asked her to work with Tolu and Kailisha to request a legal opinion on that issue, whether or not students can vote, what needs to change in order to for that to happen. And so hopefully we'll have something in their hands so they can share with the community, and we can also understand, what the history is and what needs to happen for there to be a consideration of student vote. So
thank you.
Put it in the works.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And with that, I want to thank all of our speakers tonight. On behalf of the board, I'd like to invite you to next month's committee meeting. Our next joint committee meeting will be held on December 3rd at 4 p.m. Our next action meeting will take place on December 10th at 5 p.m. Please continue to check our website and social media for updates on these meetings. I now move to adjourn this meeting of the Board of Education. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say yes.
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 Thank you, everyone. The Board of Education action meeting is adjourned. Have a great night and stay safe.
Thank you.